Hello, welcome back to Geometric Virtual Learning. This is your online maths tutor. In today's lesson, I'll be talking to you about direct proportion. What's a direct proportion? Two quantities are said to be in direct proportion if they increase or decrease in the same ratio. And in this particular lesson, I'll be talking to you about different kinds of direct proportion. We'll be talking about what we call linear direct proportion. This is the notation, and this is the formula that we'll be using to answer questions. Quadratic direct proportion is of this form, notation and the formula. Cubic direct proportion and other direct proportions. So I'll be giving you examples of each to explain to you how to work out missing proportion. So this is a typical exam question. Y is directly proportional to x. When y is 8, x is 2. Express y in terms of x. B. Find y when x is 6. C. Find x when y is 42. So you have to do things in steps. Anytime that you see a question where they say express y in terms of x, that means they want you to create an equation or formula for it. So this is the symbol notation for direct proportion, and this is the K represent the proportionality coefficient. So how do we start? We start with the proportionality coefficient formula. Y is K equals to K times X because it's directly proportional. This is how we start this. Then you're going to use these two initial numbers to substitute to work out your K. So 8 equals 2 times K. And therefore we need to work out what K is from here. Simple equation, we divide through by 8, so K will be equals to 4. And therefore to express our Y in terms of X, we need to substitute the value of K back to what we created before, because this is called an implicit formula, so we need to make it explicit. So we know K, so the actual expression or the formula is Y equals 4 times X, or y equals 4x. That's the answer for A. And once you've got the answer for the formula, that's what you use to create all these, find all these answers. What this means is, you know your formula is y equals 4x. So what this actually means is that when x is equal to 6, what will be y? So it's a simple substitution question. Substitute the value of x, which is 6. Therefore, y will be equals 4 times 6. And y will be 24. For C part, still remember the formula, y equals 4 times x. What this actually means is, when y is 42, what will be x? Also substitution, we substitute 42 in place of y. 42 equals 4 times x, then we solve for x. So we do this by dividing through by 4. If we divide through by 4, x will be 10.5. So this is an example of a linear direct proportion. Let's look at another linear direct proportion. P is directly proportional to S. When P is 3, S equals 15. Express P in terms of S. Find P when S is 9, and find S when P is 7. So we start with the proportionality formula, and we use these two given initial values. We substitute to find K. So P is 3 and S is 15. So here to find K, we divide through by 15, each side by 15, and K will be 3 over 15. Simplest form will be 1 over 5. So this implicit formula needs to be made explicit by replacing K, and that will be our answer for A. So the real formula now is P equals 1 over 5 times S in simple form, simplest form. P is equal to S over 5. So what this actually means is that, given this as the formula, if S is 9, what will be P? Substitute 9 in place of S. So P is 9 over 5, or 1 whole 4 over 5, or 1.2. Whichever answer that you write is correct. Now this side means, given this formula, if P is 7, what is S? Substitute 7 in place of P. Simple equation, we multiply both sides by 5, and s will be equals to 35. So this is the linear direct proportion. Let's look at the quadratic direct proportion. N is directly proportional to square of q. When n equals 81, q is 3. A. Calculate the value of n when q is 7. And B. Calculate the value of q when n is 225. Here we've not been asked to do the formula, but it's really important that we get the formula to help us really structure our working out. So we state the proportionality formula. Remember, this time it's quadratic, so it has to be x squared. Sorry, it's q squared, because n is directly proportional to the square of q. So that's q squared. We place 81 and 3 into this equation to find k. So 81 equals 3 squared times k, and 3 squared is 9. So to find k, we divide both sides by 9, and k is 9. So this implicit formula needs to be made explicit by replacing k with 9. So our true formula is n equals 9q squared, or n equals 9 times q squared. So this is what we're going to use to work out a and b. Looking at a, what this means is that if q is 7, what will be n? So in place of q, I'll write 7, and therefore n will be equals to 9 times 7 squared. 7 squared is 49, so n is 9 times 49, and that gives you 441. Now for b, it means, given the formula n equals nq squared, if n is 225, what will q be? So we substitute n in place of n, 225. So our first equation will be 225 equals 9q squared. We solve for q by first dividing through by 9. Then from there, we find the square root, because 225 divided by 9 is 25. And we are looking for q and not q squared. The inverse of square is square root. Square root both sides, you have q to be 5. So if you check for all these questions that we've been doing for direct proportion, you'll realize that, let me just take you back to show you. Right, you say when p was 3, s is given as 15, we increase p to 7 and s rose to 35. So direct, that means they all increase in the same direction, in the same proportion as well. And if you look at the quadratic also for the quadratic, n was 81, q is 3. We increased n to 225, and we had q also increased by 5, except that the increment in 1 is in squared, is in multiple, so that is squared. That's the only difference. They must be increasing or they must be falling. Let's look at the next one. Cubic direct proportion. We set it up the same way. So pause it and read. Hope you've read it. Now we start with the proportionality formula. Y equals k times x squared. Now x cubed, remember, is the cubic direct proportion, so it's s cubed. Use the first initial values to find the proportionality coefficient of k. 250 equals 5 cubed times k, and 5 cubed is 125. So to find k, divide through by 125, and k is 2. So we change the implicit formula into explicit, and y equals 2x cubed, or 2 times s cubed. So this is our formula that we're going to use to work out a and b. So a, it means if x is 4, what will y be? So in place of x, I'm going to put 4. So y will be equal to 2 times 4 cubed, and 4 cubed is 64. So y will be equal to 2 times 64, that gives you 128. And if you check x 5, you have 250. We reduce x by 1, and x is now 4, so y should also reduce from 250 to 128. So it's direct proportion. Next example, to find b, it means if y is 54, what is x? So in place of y, we write 54. And we set up simple equation. Divide through by 2. That will be 27. And we are finding the inverse of a cube, that is the cube root. So when you find the cube root of each side, cube root of 27 will give us 3. And let's look at our last example of other direct proportion. Pause the video and read the question. Okay. Y is directly proportional to square root of x. When y is 32, x equals 16. Express y in terms of x and find x when y is 200. So we begin with the proportionality equation in this form. So it's a square root, so k times square root of x. Use the initial values given to find your k. This is called implicit formula because we don't know the k yet. But we can work out k using 32 for y and 16 for x. So substitute. Square root of 16 is 4. So to find k, divide through by 4, and k is equal to 8. So to make the formula explicit, y will now be equal to y equals 8 times square root of x, or y equals 8 root x, the same thing. So to find b, what it means is that given this formula that we've just worked out, if y is 200, what is x? Replace y with 200. So it's 200 equals 8 times square root of x. Divide through by 8. You work out 200 divided by 8. Then you find the square root, you square both sides, 200 divided by 8 is 25. To reverse square root is to square both sides. So when you square both sides, you have x equals 625. So that's the end of the direct proportion lesson. Look forward to the second lesson, indirect or inverse proportion. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and pass it to your friends. Thanks.